Russians and Belarusians are having their Zapad military exercise. What do you see going on here? Is this a possibility of spiraling towards World War III, or is it just, I guess, a lot of noise?
Well, first of all, anytime you have NATO and Russia involved in anything that could lead to potential direct conflict, it's a danger and should be treated very seriously. And this current crisis should be treated very seriously. But let's understand reality. Russia did not attack Poland, and Russia did not attack Romania. Um, the Romanian drone could have been a drone that was deviated off course because of electronic warfare, some other action. The idea that Russia would send a single reconnaissance drone or a decoy drone into Romania is absurd facially. And the Polish incident appears to be, and even the Poles are having trouble denying this, that it's just a Ukrainian setup. Um, Initially, I thought that, based upon the data that was available early on, that these were Shahed 136 Geranium-2 type drones that, according to the Belarusian Ministry of Defense, had been, um, captured by Ukrainian electronic warfare capabilities and diverted, into Poland. Um, that doesn't appear to be the case. These appear to be disposable decoy drones that Ukraine has accumulated over time, um, and repaired and then sent them into Poland in a premeditated, coordinated event, meaning that this didn't take the Poles by surprise. The Poles knew exactly what was happening, and it's all played to a script that basically has the Poles declaring an Article 4 emergency for the purpose of generating a NATO surge of resources into Poland. But that's just a front because the surge of resources is actually pretty pathetic. 2 Eurofighters for Britain. I'm sure the Russians are losing a lot of sleep over that one. 3 Rafales from France. Again, wow. I think there was 2 more fighters sent in from Germany. Um, so the British, the Germans, and the French sent a total of 7 fighters. America sent 10 F-35s to Puerto Rico because of one Venezuelan alleged drug smuggling ship. So it just tells you that the Europeans aren't serious about this at all. Um, the Poles, surged another 40,000 or 40,000 troops to the border, but that's not real military power. It's nothing. The big news here is that Ukraine now is going to be training NATO air defenses in how to intercept Russian drones and missiles. Um, this is where it gets problematic because now what is happening is that we're creating a military force in Poland that will be able to almost immediately meld itself into Ukraine's integrated air defense should the decision be made to extend this air defense umbrella into Western Ukraine. Um, in the past, one of the big blocks was you just can't plug NATO into Ukraine. But now they're creating a situation where you can plug NATO into Ukraine. Ukraine is being plugged into NATO right now as we speak. This is the danger that NATO will become empowered, emboldened, or Poland might become unilaterally emboldened into believing that they can make a move on Western Ukraine. And that's where we get into the potential force on force conflict and it spins out of control. But this was a 100% setup. The United States knows this. I mean, this is why Donald Trump's not losing any sleep over what's happening here. If for a moment we thought that this was a serious Russian incursion, you'd see American resources being surged in, but we're not playing that game. So this is a political game that everybody knows is a political game. The problem is the consequences of this political game are creating a military capability that can plug straight into a NATO military capability. Once it's finished being trained up, we'll be able to plug straight into Ukraine's integrated air defense in a seamless fashion.
So the problem is, yeah, they're setting up preparation then for possibly entering the war. Now, often it's dismissed because the Europeans do not have that much capabilities. They can't really act without the United States, and so far the US looks, well, it seems disinterested. However, there's always the concern that desperation will increase as Ukraine now, I think everyone who's seriously watching this are admitting that Ukraine is collapsing. So if the Ukrainian army is collapsing on the front, not at a rapid speed, but it's intensifying, it seems, uh, the Europeans and NATO only have two options: either sit down, talk, and bring an end to this war, or escalate. And given that the Europeans do not refuse to even sit down and talk to the Russians, it kind of only leaves escalation left. I mean, how are you reading the general European approach to this war in terms of what it might do in the final stages?
Well, it's clear they're not going to escalate in a meaningful fashion. They don't have the ability to do this. I go back to, I think it was earlier this summer when Mr. Narishkin, the head of the Russian Foreign Intelligence Service, I guess they held some sort of seminar where they discussed, what Ukraine could look like in a post-conflict scenario. And one of the things that was actively discussed was Western Ukraine being given to the Poles, meaning allowing the Polish to take over. I think this may be the safety valve here. I'll call it controlled escalation. As Ukraine itself devolves, dissolves, disintegrates, you will see a retreat of Ukrainian governmental resources to the west, in Lvov and other cities, along with Ukrainian military resources, aircraft and things of that nature. At some point in time, I believe that part of the demilitarization plan of Russia is to allow Poland to extend, um, and this will be a humanitarian crisis as well, with millions of Ukrainians fleeing to the west, to create the conditions in which Poland can occupy Western Ukraine. In order to do that, Poland will have to extend its air defense into Western Ukraine. And I think that's what we're looking at here. We're looking at a scenario of a controlled collapse of Ukraine. Because now what happens? Poland will not allow a viable Ukrainian military to remain intact on territory that is under the control of Poland. So the Poles now will have demilitarization obligations to, you know, to take this equipment away from a Ukrainian military that will be, in effect, disarmed by NATO. Um, and also denazification. If you think the Poles, especially under their current president, are going to tolerate a Banderist Ukrainian government in Western Ukraine controlled by Poland, think again. And I think this is, a politically elegant solution that Narishkin apparently was considering. Whether or not Vladimir Putin concurs or whether or not the situation will, you know, evolve to where this becomes a possibility, it's unknown. But I don't see any scenario under which Europe does an aggressive, meaningful intervention designed to, have immediate engagement with Russian forces. What I see is Poland beginning the process of being prepared for a controlled absorption of Western Ukraine into the Polish sphere of influence. This is why you see 40,000 troops moving to the border. This is why you see talk about, air defense integration, etc.
Would this just be a natural part of the disintegration then of Ukraine, or do you think it would be like the Poles and the Russians might come to a post-conflict settlement where the Russians would actually accept this, as you indicated? There's been talks about this because would this fit within a concept of a security guarantee then, if the western parts of Ukraine would be under some kind of a Polish protection, which would be gradual absorption. Again, I think people underestimate that it's not the construct of Ukraine. It's not just the Russians who have some problems with it. The Poles, Romanians, Hungarians. There's a lot who might look to, I guess, reset some of these deals which were previously made.
Well, I mean, again, that same conference where Naryshkin and company contemplated Western Ukraine falling under a Polish sphere of influence, they also talked about Carpathia going to Hungary and other territories going to Romania as well. So we're looking at the partition of Ukraine. I believe that uh, look, we know that Lukashenko, the president of Belarus, has said any Polish incursion into Western Ukraine will automatically bring Belarus into the war because they won't allow that. Um, so any Polish incursion into Western Ukraine, I believe, can't happen without the Russians greenlighting up front, which means that there probably already is an understanding between Russia and Poland. Um, that's just how intelligence services work. Um, that there is an understanding because neither side wants World War III. Nobody's looking for a conflict, and everybody understands that um, this has to be a controlled demolition of Ukraine. You can't just let it come down on its own because that leads to too many uncertainties and unpredictable outcomes. The goal here would be to create the most predictable outcome possible. Europe, of course, wants to avoid this because um, what we're talking about is, an uncontested Russian victory, a total defeat for NATO. Um, but the idea of letting Russia win and not having a plan to stabilize the region, I think is, especially from a Polish perspective, unthinkable. So the Poles here have to be prepared to help with the controlled demolition of Ukraine.